They don't argue. They don't yell, debate, or try to prove anything. That's because their goal isn't to win the conversation. It's to win your programming. High-level manipulators don't fight logic. They bypass it entirely. They know that arguing with someone's thoughts activates their mental defenses. So instead, they go around them quietly, with precision. They observe your emotional patterns, your biases, your need for approval, and they use those things to guide your behavior without you realizing it. It starts with small agreements, phrases you already believe, safe truths. They begin by mirroring your mindset, not challenging it. And as soon as you're comfortable, they start steering. Not your thoughts, but your reactions. Not your beliefs, but your impulses. You think you're still making your own decisions, but your options have already been narrowed. Your frame of reference has already been built. You've already been led. The master manipulator never looks like a threat. They look like a supporter, a friend, even a leader. And while you're focused on what they're saying, you forget to question what you're feeling. Because it's not about the conversation. It's about the condition. By the time you sense control, it's not something you can confront. Because there's no direct attack, no argument to dismantle, just a slow replacement of your own agency. They didn't need to overpower you. They just needed you to agree once, without realizing you agreed. From that moment, your resistance begins to erode. Not because you're weak, but because they made surrender feel like your own idea. The best commands are the ones you don't notice. High-level manipulators don't give orders. They give you direction disguised as your own decision. They never push. They place. They plant small cues in your environment, in your expectations, in your patterns. And by the time you react, you think it was your idea. This is what's called a frictionless command. No tension, no resistance, just agreement that feels like freedom. You choose to follow without realizing the choice was already made for you. You think you're deciding to stay quiet, to hold back, to say yes, to avoid confrontation. But that response didn't start with you. It started with them. The way they framed the question, the timing of their words, the silence they left after speaking. It was all deliberate. And every one of those moves was designed to reduce friction. Because once there's no friction, there's no fight. You won't argue with what feels natural. You won't defend against what sounds like your own voice. And they know it. This is why high-level manipulators are patient. They don't rush control. They engineer it. They understand that lasting influence doesn't come from force. It comes from familiarity. They want you to say yes to one small thing, then another, not because they want your loyalty, but because they want your alignment. They want your mind to move when they move, your instincts to follow theirs. And the most dangerous part, it works better when you trust them. Because when you trust them, you won't notice the moment your behavior stops being yours. You'll just keep saying yes until you're no longer capable of saying no. They don't overpower your mind. They hijack your emotions because logic is slow, but emotion is immediate. And if they can control what you feel, they don't need to control what you think. High-level manipulators understand that fear, guilt, validation, and loneliness work faster than arguments. So they don't try to win debates. They trigger reactions. A small pause in their voice to imply disappointment. A slight nod that makes you crave approval. A silence that forces your insecurity to speak louder than reason. You start adjusting yourself, not because they told you to, but because you want to avoid the discomfort they engineered. You want their reassurance. You want their attention. You want their approval. And just like that, they rerouted your behavior without ever making a demand. They don't show control. They induce it. You'll begin questioning whether you were wrong. You'll second guess what you knew was right. And you'll eventually apologize for things you didn't even do, just to bring back balance to the emotional environment they distorted. This isn't just manipulation. It's emotional programming. And the worst part? You think you're being emotionally intelligent. You think you're being kind, understanding, empathetic. But what you're really doing is adapting to survive inside their influence. Every move they make is calculated to destabilize your emotional foundation, so they can build theirs in its place. And once that happens, you don't just obey. You depend. You depend on their approval to feel peace, on their presence to feel safe. And their silence, that becomes punishment. This is no longer a conversation. It's a silent takeover. And most people never even notice it happening until they're completely rebuilt around someone else's design. The most effective manipulation doesn't break your identity. It isolates it. They don't tell you who to be. They just make you question who you are. Slowly, they peel away the reference points. Your friends start to feel distant. Your beliefs start to feel naive. Your gut instinct starts to feel wrong. Not because they prove you wrong, but because they make you unsure. They plant small questions in your mind. Are you overreacting? Maybe you misunderstood. Why do you always assume the worst? They never give answers. They only leave doubt, and doubt spreads faster than truth. So you begin to pull back. You second guess your own thoughts. You stop sharing with others, not out of fear, but out of confusion. You isolate yourself, not because they told you to, but because you're not sure who's right anymore. And that's the trap. They don't need control what you believe. Just disconnect you from anything that used to give you clarity. Once you're cut off from your past convictions, your community, your intuition, you become easier to rewrite. You're not defending yourself anymore. You're waiting for them to define you. And the moment they offer a label, any label, you'll grab it like it's truth, because it's the first solid thing you felt in weeks. They don't just isolate your mind. They isolate your reality. And when no one else's voice gets through, they don't need to shout to own you. They just whisper. And you'll listen, not because you agree, but because you've forgotten how to trust anyone else. That by now, you're not just influenced, you're restructured. Your thoughts move where they want. Your emotions rise and fall in sync with their approval. Your silence, your agreement, your guilt, all programmed. And the most dangerous part? You still think it's you, because they didn't replace your mind. They rewrote its rules. High-level manipulators don't dominate from above. They govern from within. They install patterns. They reward compliance with connection. They punish resistance with distance. You begin to anticipate their reactions before they even speak. You filter your words. You shrink your boundaries. You adjust over and over until your identity isn't something you carry. It's something you manage for them. That's when the control is complete. Not when you say yes, but when saying no feels unsafe. Not when you agree, but when disagreement makes you panic. And yet, you won't call it manipulation. You'll call it love, or loyalty, or emotional intelligence. You'll defend them. You'll defend the system that's using you. Because that system now feels like home. This is the final layer. Control, that doesn't feel like control. Influence, that feels like instinct. Programming that hides behind the word connection. And if this sounds familiar, then it's already started. The only question now is, will you stay in the loop or will you break it? Because the truth is, you're either the programmer or the product. And if you're tired of being reprogrammed, if you're ready to think with your own mind again, then it starts now. Subscribe, not because I said so, but because you know it's time to take the system back.